Welcome, welcome, welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. I'm Beth Bergen. I'm a global leadership and communication coach, and I work with executives, managers, business owners individually, confidentially, and every now and then I also work with their teams as well as we take a team version or a team approach to leadership and communication. I'm here most Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Look, last week we looked at really polite ways, polite's a good way of putting it, polite ways to set boundaries so that you could maintain that professionalism. And our goal was really all about maintaining the relationship as well. So we looked at things like becoming more assertive in your communication, knowing when you've had enough in certain situations, whether it be at work, friends, or family. And also, I gave you an overview of the I statement so that you could start to use that in your communication. And I hope some of you have actually been using it. So today's our last session about boundaries, and what I wanted to look at, because it's a very common thing that comes up with people that I'm coaching: new role, new boundaries. How do I do that? And from my perspective, understanding that you need to renegotiate all of these things all the time is a really important aspect of leadership intelligence. So it's one of those things that goes into your leadership intelligence toolbox. Not only is it about setting boundaries in the first place, and part of that, as we've learned, is being assertive, learning to say no, learning I statements, all of those kinds of things, but also new role, you need to renegotiate. So this is as much about knowing and understanding when to say no as it is when to say yes. And of course, when you say yes, what's really important is that you understand what it is that you're agreeing to. Yeah, that's really important. That's probably a subject for a whole nother time. So, what might you need to look at to make boundaries about? And what might you need to renegotiate in that new role? Because remembering that boundaries are all about your autonomy. That's what's important. So, I've got 5 or 6 things here that I want us to just talk through very quickly. So, the first one is unsolicited advice. Now, there's a really big difference between people being helpful. That's always welcome. Give me that advice. I might necessarily have asked for it, but if it's going to be helpful, yep, let's talk about it. But there's also those people who will want to give you unsolicited advice at work and away from work, and it's all about control and manipulation. So you must have some kind of boundary about what you're prepared to take and what you're not prepared to take in terms of that unsolicited advice. I found that most of the time I learn best when I make my own decisions and when I learn from those mistakes. However, if you've made a decision that you're going to be coached or mentored by someone, then it's really about following that advice. It's really about following that pattern and asking questions when you don't understand. So that's what's really important here. So the first one is unsolicited advice. Make a boundary around what you'll take and what you won't take. The second one is this, and this is a very common thing, particularly when we move into new roles, and this is distractions. Now, for many people, I'm in a new role, I've got this new team, I'm going to have my door open all the time. What's important to me is that I have a door open policy and I'm seen as being available. People think I'm awesome because I'm there. Now, what's not important at all for you may be really important and potentially urgent for other people. So the more often you have your door open, the more likely people are going to come in and distract you. Now we operate in a world where our mobile phone is with us all the time. People can send us a text message. We get emails all the time. You need to determine and have a boundary about when you're going to respond to those emails, when you're going to respond to those notifications, when you're going to answer the phone and when you're not. Maybe it's about limiting some of that time because it will take you off task. So set some boundaries for yourself and help other people to understand what those boundaries are. Now, this is all about also a distraction can be, when others can see into your diary, then that makes a difference. So schedule that time, set a boundary about the time that you're going to need to be distracted or to get that deep, meaningful work done. Boundaries around distractions, because otherwise we know if we start scrolling on things like Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, an hour and a half can have gone by and you haven't got anything productive particularly done. Third one, your values. Now, probably you've worked out exactly what your values are already. If you haven't, give me a call and I'll do a values exercise with you. But, when there's a new role and there's new people, we're being tested in ways that we didn't perhaps get tested in the previous job. Now, what's important is that you know, understand, and hold on to those values. So it's not about saying yes to compromise them. It's about holding on to that. Like integrity and truth are some of my most important values. And there have been times in my work where I've been absolutely hit between the eyes by someone's lack of integrity. Saying no in that circumstance can be really tough. And that's going to likely be a difficult conversation, and maybe you'll also lose an opportunity. For me, it's important to actually say no in that circumstance. And one of the questions that I ask myself around this values is, would that pass the pub test? If people were talking about it in the local hotel or round the water cooler or, in the neighbourhood, would it pass that water cooler, pub or neighbourhood test? The fourth one is this: I'm always available. You've got higher responsibilities in your new position. So there's likely to be more demand placed on you. And you might be someone who thinks that being a good leader means that you are dependable, I'm available, I'm productive. Something you need to watch out for here if you don't set a boundary is burnout, because something has to give at some stage. And if you've got no harmony in your life, and by that I mean the harmony between at work and away from work, then that's likely to lead to burnout. So the boundaries need to be around you absolutely switching off when you're not at work. And when you start your new role, it's important that you negotiate this and that you negotiate it into your boundary. We'll have a little bit more about that in a moment. The fifth one is imposter. We're an imposter and we feel like we perhaps shouldn't be there. And so we're prepared to accept a little bit more, a little bit less rather, than we deserve. So, I'm happy to settle. I want you to be sure that in your boundaries, what you're doing is valuing you, that you're making sure that you're enhancing your own self-esteem and that you're building your own confidence, both in the job environment and in relationships, because if they're below the standard that you deserve, you're devaluing yourself. So think about letting them go and moving on. Sometimes, again, a tough decision, a tough conversation. But you've got this, you can do that. Finally, It's about understanding your role. Now, this is huge because there are lots of boundaries that you can put in place around this. But the first thing is that you've got to get really curious. So, in understanding your role, number one, what's your workload? Understand what your workload is. Understand what the priorities in that workload are so that you know where are the deadlines, when are things expected, who do you need to report to, who can you delegate tasks to, who who do you need to communicate with? What are those communication lines? Who do you communicate with? When do you communicate with them? You know, and how often is that? What form does that take? Is it a weekly meeting with your line manager? Do you have to attend team meetings? Do you need to be running meetings with your team? Who do you let know that you want to take some time out? Who are you accountable to? So these are all the curious things that you need to get asking these questions so that you can set boundaries around this new role. What are the communication standards around here? How do people talk to each other? What kind of language will people put up with? What are the dress standards? What are there some policies and processes that you need to understand? What are the hours that you can access the workplace? And that way you can set some limits and you can look to building that harmony between at work and at home. What resources do you have available to you? Can you work from home? Do you have resources and access to be able to do that? Do you want to work from home? Or do you want to leave your work behind you? What kind of scheduling can you do? And we looked at this scheduling a little earlier when I talked about, you know, that always being available. If others can access your diary, then you've got to have some boundaries around um, how they communicate with you about shifting things around or putting meetings over the top of existing meetings. When you've got those boundaries, what we've already learned is that if you're consistent about them, if you speak them all the time, then what you're actually doing is consolidating them. And every time you're more certain about them because you're communicating with them. Now, that's a lot in understanding your role. Workload priorities, delegating tasks, when to take time out, communication standards, who am I communicating with, when can I take time out, how long am I going to work each day, what are my resources, and what's my scheduling. Now, I really have probably only scratched the surface there, but that should get you started. And if what you remember is new role, new responsibilities, I'm going to need to renegotiate my boundaries, then you will get curious about the things that you need to actually know. So that's not, I know it's a lot. So if you're feeling not sure, start by practicing at home. If you're living or sharing with housemates, make some rules, make some house rules, stick to them, have a schedule. There are roles and responsibilities in tow. Who cleans up? Who cooks? How do you do things? Who keeps the fridge clean? Which bathroom are you responsible for? Whatever it might be. So practice at home. And also, same thing, if you have children or you're sharing with your partner, the jobs, the house or the family rules, the kind of schedules that you're going to have so that you can have that harmony, so that everyone can be doing the things that they enjoy to do, but you can all be making sure that you're spending some quality time together. So that finishes everything that we've done about boundaries. Let me know, yell out if you'd like some help setting some boundaries. Sometimes it can help to have a conversation with a person who's guiding you as a coach and asking you the right questions to help you identify what those boundaries might be. So thank you. If you've got any questions or comments, please pop them in the platform that you're watching this on. And if you're watching it as a replay, I'd love it if you'd put hashtag replay. What we're trying to do is to reach out to everyone who's either watched or who said that they're going to watch, so that we can make sure we get as much exposure as possible. So if you're wanting to implement your boundaries, reach out and we'll have a conversation about how we can be working together. In the meantime, see you next week. Bye now.